Yep, and he's going to be called Old Rusty. I think that the patient is dead. Je suis très heureux avec toutes les pièces.
Un plaisir de te faire revivre un U23, c'est bien.
Ouais.
Si ça peut servir, tant mieux.
Ouais.
Tant mieux.
Merci beaucoup. I'm quite happy with what I got. You see in front of you the two engines for a U23. And I've got lots of stuff inside the truck. And then finally I will undo the bolts here where the gearbox is connected to the engine block itself. There we go. Yeah. Well, that's easy. And there it is. But anyhow, here it is. The next thing I'm going to do is to clean it all up, and then we're going to put it on a stand and start inspecting what's wrong with it. Very easy to get it off. All kind of things could have happened with this engine. It could have run out of oil and seized up. It could have been overheated because of a cooling problem. Not a pretty sight if you ask me. A lot of sludge of oil. I might have to take the carburetor off. Okay, there we go. So some of these bolts are very hard to get at. And I don't see a lot of carbon buildup, so that's also a good sign. So let's open it up and find out. There we go. Yeah, there is not much oil coming out of it, is it? Oof, got mixed up with the actual oil. And let's check it out. Oh, look at this. I don't see no damage on it, which is kind of interesting. Except now that the cylinders, as you can tell, they are really in a bad shape. In fact, they are rusted. In the last cylinder, I actually spotted a hole in the piston on the side here. Here you have it. Let's try, and if I'm getting lucky, I'm going to get it off. If I'm unlucky, well, then the engine probably will rotate and I will have to block the engine in one way or another. I don't think this is going to work like this. Oh, well, it does. There we go. Off. There we go. And this one. And this is the oil filter, and it's all clogged up, as you can see. This is the oil pump, and I'm going to remove this now first of all. You need to knock out these little pins, but we'll do all that later. And then you can actually pull it out gently. There we go. Gently knock. There we go, and that's the crankshaft. Let me put it aside. I cannot move, or just a little bit. This is really bad. That's one. So we need to clean that, and the most critical part is all the way on the bottom where the sleeve is sitting. This engine is fitted with cylinder sleeves, so they go in like this, and they fit here on the bottom. That's where they fit. And there's a paper seal there that you need to adjust later, and you can see me peeling it off. So this is number 2. Anyway, so yeah, they look pretty much scratched. There we go, that's one. Check the journals and the main bearings and see what the situation is. Alright guys, this is the motor, and it's all blasted and it looks quite good, but now I have to hurry up to paint it because it's going to get rusty very quickly. Special engine paint. Well, it doesn't really stuck, but I don't have a lot of play. I think 49.50 should be good, and if that doesn't work out, I'll tell him if he still sees scratches and unevenness, then he can take even a bit more out. Those followers, so when the cam is running, you can see it pushes it up. 5 coats of paint, and now I'm going to let it dry. You have to keep it flat and make sure you don't round off the edges, okay? All the non-precision machined areas, the top of the block where the cylinder head is resting on, now that is a precision machined area. And I'm just going to move the block around on the glass, and you'll see the deflection of the needle, how much deflection we have. And you see, it's almost not moving. We use a micrometer for that, and I'm just going to move it. See, it deflects a little bit, but that's now of course close to the edge. But now it's time to fit the followers, and these are the followers, and they are sliding into a bore. I moved it in. I'm just going to wet it nicely. And these are the new sleeves. Look at that. Isn't that a beauty? We're going to grind in that whole surface. So position, and I just move around like this, back and forth, just like you would do this. As you can see, the whole seating area now is cleaned up on all 4 of the bores where the sleeves will fit in. And because sometimes you can have small mistakes. You see what we need to do on the other side. And here it is, the white metal. 663 grams, so that's 1 gram less. It's not going to be any issue that we have a little bit of pitting on that. Again in the other direction, and it's also 60, as you can see. This is what I'd use. Now you can use whatever you want. You don't want to scratch anything. But make it tight enough. High end and a low end. And that's why there is a pointer. There are special pliers for circlips, but if you have some fine pliers, you can do it like this. And that comes out like that. Like this. Fingers going onto the steel parts. That should not be that difficult to do. Line it up into place. You don't need to knock hard on any of this. Alright. So this is the seal that we need at the bottom. So there's one way it goes in, and now on the arrow that we have on the pistons, and now I need to hold these sleeves into place, because if I'm going to flip over the block, and also marked an arrow on it so I know exactly which direction they point. The screws, and then this part can come off like this. I'm just going to leave it like so, and now we can take this part off, and now you see the 2 tooth wheels, and you can imagine that will lose some oil pressure. Everything greased from the start. It's all small stuff with my big fingers. Oops, don't push that too far back. The panel up. And that's not very good, but that all will be cleaned up. And you see some deposit on it. But for that, you need to compress the valve. And obviously you have to have access. I will try to push that back a bit. And if you look closely, you will see all the little holes. These are oil channels. Feel the edges where the wear area is, and it really is a difference compared to here. So I will have to replace the rocker shaft for sure. You know, toggle in its area, and it doesn't. But I'm going to get the valve seats and the valve guides replaced together with new valves. Also, the crankshaft came back. So that means that my crankshaft is now undersized. It can make a difference, so pay attention that here is my calibration piece. It's 25 mil. How good that fits, and this fits just perfect, as you can see. 25 millimeter thicker, and that's these bearings. These are the main bearings. The bearing so that the crankshaft is rotating in kind of a cushion of oil. And that's where it is. You just push it in. Use a rack which is lint free. The other way around is use a dowel bore gauge. I'm going to rock it back and forth. So the first thing we're going to do right now is to prepare the crankshaft. If not, then you have a problem. Rubber hammer. And I mean really gently. See that oil channel? That must continue all the way between. That's one. And depending on what you measure, I may have to add or remove them. But pull back the crankshaft to the back. All right, now it's pulled back. I will place the dial on 0. Now I'm going to push the crankshaft forward with the lever. And we're sitting at around 10. So that is 0.1 millimeter. I've done it for all the cabs because that's important that you install those correctly. Locking tab and the bolt. Number 2. I'm not going to lock it down all the way yet, guys. This is just for now. But I think I said that already once before. Like this, yeah. And we need to lock them in place with our magic screwdriver. And the camshaft is provided by a double chain. It's still showing up on the new sprockets. And guess what? And I think this is about right. I'm looking straight through here. Of both axles. There we go. Slide that in. And then I want to lock it with the counter nut. This tube right here is actually the output of the oil pump, and it's feeding the whole engine, so that better be right, and more specifically the oil filter. And it's a bit awkward. It was quite intensive to change the oil filter. Let me put the old one up on top of the new one. Now normally I place multiple parts in it, but because everything is numbered, I'm going to keep it side by side. The seals all around the block itself. Now to make sure that I have no leaks all the way at the end, I'm going to put a bit of, there we go, And we're going to torque down the main cap to 7 kilograms. I'm just going to push that in. I want to make sure that it goes in properly. And squeeze it together. The rocker plate is now in on both sides. I have placed the seal in between. It was a bit of fiddling to get it all in. As you can see, not easy access to these bolts. But now at least we can lock it up. So what I see on the new gasket is I'm missing this hole. I'm going to mark the holes I need to make. So first of all, I'm going to align. No issues here. I was a bit more careful. I didn't drill it out. I just grinded it out. Not always that easy. All right. So these are now pretty well looped. It's got to go down with the copper facing downwards. So that's how we place it on there. 7. This is number 3. Let me show you that in a bit more detail, what I'm referring to. And that's how it's going to grease or oil all the tumblers. I'm just going to turn in and then we'll see how clean that is. But they should be fairly clean. It's a small effort and it really is going to help you out. And the easiest way is to take it off just with a razor blade. And we're going to clean out actually the inside a bit, 3 and 4 and so on. And then we're going to have a look on how we need to fit all the different washers and parts and springs. It's passing that hole, it's going to leak out very quickly. And you can actually see that because it should be both pointing inwards a bit. And I'm going to use a small tube just to see if it feeds in properly. And I'm just going to put some bolts in so I can hold the thing. Here we go. And now to bolt everything down, but not very tight. And then I'm going to put some compressed air through it. See how all the oil is coming out in all the different areas? I'm going to put it between the top of the stem of the valve. I already have given a bit of a white tick here, so I know more or less where it's supposed to be. Many auxiliary parts that I still have to put up. Check the brushes and check the rotor. We'll measure it all out. It is in really good shape. I have some spare parts for it, so you can't run a car or an engine like Old Rusty without the carburetor. And this is a Solex, and this is the fuel pump. This one I already took apart once just to have a look how it looked like. The next thing we're going to do is to open up the fuel pump. And here you see the spring. We also will put up new valves. It should be nice in the middle. You can push it down a bit and you should feel, and keep filling that up until you have all 3 of them in place. Make sure it's pushed all the way to the bottom. Make sure then when you push it, I'm not going to keep you guys busy watching me turning in all these little screws, but then we can put the cover up. And this is a Kirk seal, so that should be all right. All right, so let's put it up. We go into work on the starter motor. You actually have the brushes, huh? All right, that worked with some very fine abrasive paper. Brake cleaner always works fine for me. That system, we're going to clean that up, but it still looks pretty good. So onto the flywheel, and it grabs onto the teeth of the flywheel. That's that one, and that is that one. We have a beeping sound, and we have a ground connection. And I have no conductivity, and we shouldn't have any. So let me see how this is now supposed to be fitted. Getting the brushes in wasn't all that easy. There we go, and that's all set. So I'm going to have a check inside, but also on the outside, and I already painted it with a heat-resistant paint. So let's install the intake and exhaust manifold, and first of all we're going to put up new gaskets. It's going to be interesting to see how that will go on there, and I have a copper nut that will hold it in place. And you can see immediately how much debris there is inside this carburetor, and the float is actually laying inside. It's going to take a bit of cleaning up. And the other one is a lot better, so I'm going to, it doesn't have to be a lot. I'm just gonna fit it first like this, loosely. Put it completely in place with a socket which is about the same size, and gently tap it in. And I don't have a tool to do that, so you can hear the springs. I suppose it's watertight, but it was way too big, so I had to cut one myself. It rotates, driven by the belt. It will actually suck in water and then push it back out through the hole. Alright, so now let's put the seal up. So now we'll install the water pump. We are putting things to torque. And of course, I'm going to give it some grease. But in this case, it is not happening. All what we have inside are what we call bob weights. And I just need to make sure that I put it in the right way. And now I have a metal one. Now I have continuity, but on this bolt here I should have no continuity. If I do, then I have a short, and there we should have continuity, and we do. I don't need to tighten that up right now. Let's see. The plus 12 volts going into the distributor. So now that we have tested out the ignition system, we will go and install it on the engine oval rusty. Now the gases are almost out. So this is very near to top dead center. And I think that guy is actually in now. With this outlet. So this is my cylinder number 1. You can actually see that the Solex carburetor I'm going to fit now, the 32. Of course we have the flow chamber. In this specific case for idle circuitry running, it has no effect. There is a backside connection. Is the opening for sucking in fuel. What I have on the board here is the carburetor in very simple terms. Here we have our throttle, and that's the butterfly I was referring to. These are the wings or the openings that will actually spray in. So next is cleaning out all the channels in the carburetor housing. So I'm quite alright to use this one. I couldn't find any for that, so it seems like that is non-existing. It's always a bit difficult if you're doing it in front of a camera. And now we can mount actually the carburetor. To start the engine of old Rusty for the very first time. And believe me, I have not started it, I have not tested it. You are the ones seeing it for the first time. So I'm going to move it to the choke position. So I guess the engine now has all the vital elements it needs. So now you can see that the valves are getting greased pretty well. There's a lot of oil coming out. So now this engine should start like a champ. So let's try it out and see how easy it starts or not. I think this is pretty good.